talking about cars, but not only cars. It's about cars and smart cities, because the day was about smart cities. Thank you. I was in in Frankfurt 3 weeks ago on the motor show. And I tested the new, I think it was Audi, with an automatic parking system. So it's a valet parking system. And you just click on your electronic key. The car parks itself where you want. And it's kind of valet service. He goes to you, and you can shut it away in the parking. The parking wins space. It's a very beneficial thing for the economy. You win time and efficiency. The problem is that regulatory stuff is not following. Regulation does not allow to use it on the public road, because there is a kind of convention, international convention, which I will discuss, which says, no, you have to be in the car. So automated driving and autonomous driving is still a hell of a job for public policymakers, governments, and so on. So let me go through some of our things, what we do in FEBIAC. FEBIAC is the Belgian Association and Federation of the Car and Motorcycle Industry, also for these guys. We represent, I think, 200,000 at least companies. All the brands are a member of us. We have some manufacturing things in Belgium as well, as you know, Volvo, Ghent, trucks, buses, cars. We have Audi, Brussels, and some others in Belgium. What we do is the yearly motor show, the Brussels Motor Show, Salon de l'Auto. Everybody knows that, I guess. It's 500,000 people, so the new one is running in January. And we have a lot of lobbying and European affairs, which I will discuss later on. So this is the Belgian park, just to set the scene. Are we talking about cars? 73% of the whole park are cars, right? 50% are company cars, 50% are private cars. I'll not discuss company cars here, neither the taxation or all the kind of things. That's for another conference. Vans, trucks, motorcycles, and so on. So 5.5 million passenger cars in our country. That's quite a lot if you compare it with other countries. And it can become smarter. This is just a presentation on how good we do or how less good we do in terms of turnover, contribution to the economy, fuel consumption. There are a lot of challenges going on. Electrification is one of them. Alternative fuels, we're working on that. Road taxation will come on for trucks, tomorrow for maybe passenger cars, so more incentives to use the roads in the best optimal and most efficient way for yourself and the economy. The EU28, so that European Union-wide, we have ASEA, which is the European Association, the Association of the European Manufacturers. Very much in the Volkswagen gate, of course, like myself. It took me the whole weeks now to educate a lot of ministers and high officials on what's really going about in this Volkswagen, I would say, discussion which we have today. This is increasingly complex. I come from the telecoms world for 12 years. That was already very complex. Then I went to the postal sector, so my friend in Norway, I went to the Belgian Post to liberalize and privatize this company. Very complex, but this is even more complex. I thought cars, it's just you take your car and you go from point A to point B. No. European Commission is putting, I don't know how many pages on policies with respect to transport. They want to get trucks out of the cities. They want to have city tolling systems. They want to have safer roads, but also safer technology. Well, technology to use safe roads. There's an issue on employment, social dumping, mostly for the trucks. That's Europe 28. So that's one part. That's Mrs. Violeta Bulc, the Slovenian Commissioner for Transport. The other commissioners are dealing with industry competitiveness. It's the action plan of Mr. Juncker, the President of the European Union. More than 100 billion he has available for investments. But it's also about e-commerce. Cars today are being sold through traditional channels like dealers, concessionaires. Tomorrow, or even today, you just select your car with all the options through the internet. And then you go to the dealer to say, I want this car, please deliver. Or you don't go to the dealer, you go to Tesla, and they just deliver it without even having seen the car in a brand store. So this is a shaking tree for the dealerships as well, for the distributors. It's like the fashion industry where you got the bricks and mortar. Today you also have bricks and mortars, but you have a lot of internet e-commerce. So that's also going on in our sector. We have issues with the United States and Europe. We have the TTIP negotiations, as you may know, so the free trade zone. And we have the Volkswagen discussion on the testing, on the emissions, on who is doing these tests, what is the validity of that. Is US recognizing the European test and the other way around, so I can talk an hour on that, and it's probably boring, so I will skip it. Another issue, very much important for cities, is climate. Climate and environment and energy. Today, electric cars, some of the brands, they use these cars to load and unload electricity to the internet, to the net, not the internet, to the grid. So some of the brands, like Nissan, with the batteries, they're using the battery just like solar panels on your house to load it into your house, to use it, and to offload it as well. So they're using the grid, they call it vehicle to grid, V2G. That's new. We didn't talk about this 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. We didn't talk about this neither when a car at 10 kilometers per hour can spot free parking spaces. So he has a camera on it, a lidar, as we say, and he spots where you go in Brussels City, you want to have a parking, he spots the free empty parking spaces. And he gives that to another car, probably of the same brand, who needs a parking space next door. So he can already, kind of Uber of the parking business, he can spot free things and then send it over to another car. That's connectivity. The climate change, we have the largest discussions with the EU on CO2. We're one of the, I would say, one of the emissions polluters, we know that. Alternative fuels like gas, CNG, compressed gas, but also biofuels, very much important, and electricity, obviously. Now, and then we have technology. I know Minister De Croo will talk about this later on today. Digital agenda, connectivity, cars are being more and more connected with each other, but also with infrastructure. And that's also a new challenge for the cities. Belgium is even more complex than the European Union. I have to deal with, I think, 10 ministers that deal with mobility, with transport, and taxation. 10. We have a country of 10.x million people. So just make the calculation how increasingly complex it is. Just to set the scene, Belgium is 3 regions. We have taxation at federal and regional level. Infrastructure is being managed, the road infrastructure, by the regional entities, and sometimes the municipalities as well. Road safety, we have at least 5 ministers dealing with safety, so we're a very safe country. Digital, ITS, so intelligent transport systems, 3 ministers at least and a federal minister. Alternative fuels, and like, for example, electricity, but others, regional matter, etc., etc. So it keeps us busy. My job description is quite big on this, just to set the scene on regulatory policy. Innovation, we talked about this before. These are just figures to make an impression, but it's a very heavily innovating business in which we are, the car and truck business, from a producer point of view, but also from a consumer point of view. If you see where we come with the CO2 emissions, but also the NOx, which is then the other kinds of emissions, the climate and the environment, 70% of the cars emitted less than 130 CO2 in 2014, if you compare it with 5 years ago, which is amazing. All right. Innovation path, fuel technology, obviously. Diesel is going down and down and down for all kinds of reasons. Taxation is also stimulating alternative fuels and petrol. Automation and connectivity. I guess Minister De Croo will talk about this later on. So digital and connectivity, the European digital single market of Mr. Ansip and Oettinger is hitting our business as well. I come from the telecom side, which was full in this package. Even the car business is confronted with this. I will talk about this later on. And it's about convenience. So this is just a chart to make the progress where we are today. We come from cruise control, which was a basic thing in the past. It was a nice to have, today it's a must have, to fully automated driving tomorrow. There are tests going on in the UK with autonomous cars and autonomous buses as well. We'll do some tests in Flanders with Minister Waits and some others with autonomous driving. The problem is that legislation is not following that today. So we need to take up that in the international scene. These are the levels of the kind of automated driving you have. These are just ideas that come from international studies. It goes from you do nothing, the car does it for you, to you do everything, and the car just responds. Just some examples. These are the smarter cities, I would say. Brussels has a lot of work still. Capital of Europe is very lagging behind in terms of smartability and smart mobility. So there is some work there, and we'll discuss that with the relevant ministers. People used to make a difference between connected cars and autonomous cars. Connected cars are cars that are really connected with each other. That's quite easy. But connectivity goes much further than just talking to each other through a line of protocols. Autonomous driving is different. It has nothing to do with connectivity among the cars. It's connectivity with the infrastructure, with the cloud. So it's a car that can ride on its own, actually. And that's what we're going to test very soon in Flanders. So in terms of regulatory policy in our business, we have to make a choice. Europe has made a choice of CO2 in 2020. We have 95 grams CO2 that we need to reach in 2020, which is quite a job. But if diesel engines are very good in, I would say, in controlling the CO2, they're not so good in controlling the NOx, which is the pollutant emissions. And then you have to choose. You have to choose either petrol, which is then very much good for CO2, but not, very, very bad for CO2. So it's a choice we have to make, and that's exactly what we discussed today with the relevant ministers. Autonomous cars, so a car that rides on itself, and we have some actually examples of that today. We have a legal issue. There's a kind of Vienna Convention, international convention at the United Nations, which has in Article 8.5 that you cannot have somebody out of the car. You need to be in the car, and you have to be constantly watching the traffic and be alert. So that article actually has to be changed. I can tell you it's quite a job to change that article on a worldwide level. You need United Nations. But anyway, Belgium and Sweden are doing amendments for that. So we come from a business on, would be hardware on four wheels. Today it's a platform. A car tomorrow will be a platform of services, and you can also ride in it like a smartphone. You can also call with your smartphone next to 10,000 other things. So this is a picture of 1950 from GM. And already at that time, if you Google that, you can find movies on autonomous driving ideas in the 1950s. So well ahead in terms of, say, philosophy. We have new questions on our boilerplate. Infrastructure gets smarter and smarter, but the cars get smarter and smarter. So who is exchanging data with who? Should cars communicate with each other, give the data to the infrastructure owner and the manager? Or should the infrastructure manager also work together with our industry? It's getting smarter, but who gets the data? 3 German brands, so Daimler, BMW, and Volkswagen, they have acquired HERE. HERE is was a company part of the Nokia group. And HERE is doing the digital maps. It's all about digital maps. So the car industry takes over that business next to TomTom as a competitor. So think twice in what kind of debate we will be tomorrow. It will be ICT and cars and mobility, and it's very much blurring. So new business models are coming up in these things. So cars can capture a lot of data for themselves, for convenience, for safety, but also for other things. Spotting free parking spaces, doing all kinds of things with these data. So the question will be, and is, what kind of data can you capture? What's the, would say, the ownership of these data? What can you do with it? Did you inform the consumer of these data? Is it a personal data? If it is, then probably you have to respect the kind of data protection European and Belgian legislation. What if data are being used in another way than they have been acquired? Or what if the car that drives autonomously still has an accident? What's the liability? Is it the supplier of the software? Is it the supplier of the hardware? Is it the car manufacturer? Is it yourself, who was not attentive? Is it the road infrastructure manager who gave the wrong signals to the car? Is it the cloud? There has been a cybersecurity attack. Who is liable? So that's something we're actually now discussing with the EU and also the Belgian colleagues. So Internet of Things and cybersecurity is really going on in our business. You heard about Tesla recently, and some other brands have been attacked from the outside to intrude into the software upgrades of the cars. So also here it's critical, not only for safety, but also for technology. Alternative fuels, we're working very hard on it, and infrastructure. It's good to have electric cars, but you need charging stations. So together with Minister Turtelboom in Flanders, there's a big plan that has been at least approached in the Flemish government to promote alternative infrastructures. We need to do the same thing in Wallonia, but Wallonia thinks that gas, so CNG they call it, so it's concentrated gas, cars are much better and should be promoted. So we need to stop at our borders sometimes and have other car fuels. And finally, smarter taxation. We believe in the suppression of all these taxes on the possession of a car. We call it the possession tax. And we also do not believe that, I would say, the annual tax you pay, which is getting greener, this annual tax today, that is a good incentive. We believe in the road taxation for everybody. But it has, of course, an economic approach as well. You need to have more modal shift and probably also more mentality shift of working at home or working remotely and then using your car in the best optimal way and the best optimal time in order not to pay too much neither. So it's an incentivation system where you can give incentives, but it needs to be used in a smart way in the future. So I would say come and see us at the next motor show. And there is a dedicated day, a full day conference with European commissioners, plural, and a lot of others on connectivity. We will discuss all these things on connectivity with people, with also the Dutch presidency, who will be holding the council first half of next year, and which will have an agenda connected cars and autonomous cars. So looking forward to all see you that, but I do not make any publicity anymore now. Anyway, thanks for listening to me. If you have any questions, I'm here. So.